that's a new exciting thing that you're moving and like, you'll be living on that side of the country.
Yeah. So you're going to have to come visit me in New Mexico if this
I've been
pandemic
wanting
ever
to
ends.
Exactly. This bullshit ever ends. Can't stand it. Oh my God, I'm getting to my wit's end. But at least you traveled. That's good.
You know what? The traveling helped me like a ton. And
Definitely.
yeah, so I went to, I guess I should just say where I went. I did Monument Valley, which you've done Monument Valley before, right?
Yes, very, very long time ago. But yeah, beautiful.
That place is beautiful. It looks like it doesn't look like it's real.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Looks like a painting.
The whole thing is like that, and no matter what angle you're looking at it from, and I'm just kind of going like, how did this form? I don't understand sandstone. Like I get it, I get what they say and stuff, but I'm just like, wow, it's just beautiful. It looks like Mars or something.
Right.
Yeah, like the actual Monument Valley Park itself wasn't open because of COVID, but but like all around we were able to go and like view it and see it. And there was like really cool stuff that I never even heard of. Like one was called Gooseneck Canyon, and it was it's like that horseshoe canyon that they show, and I think Horseshoe Canyon is supposed to be like near Moab, or maybe it's Grand Canyon, but where it's like, you just see like a big U shape where the river carved out the thing, a perfect U. Well, this is like times 3. It's like boom, 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 boom. It's like a snake, and I'm kind of going, this should be more famous than the Horseshoe Canyon. This thing is amazing. So I went there, took some pictures of that. That was pretty cool. And then I did like the Mexican hat, which was like a formation that looks like a sombrero. Like there's I did like a teardrop horseshoe thing. I went on a tour with like a Navajo guide who took us around, and it's kind of weird because he was just like on the microphone in the truck because everybody was very, very COVID scared. Like nobody, it was just me and my friend, and we had very little human contact, which that's why I'm like thinking this is like the perfect time for people to get out and go do stuff. No one's anywhere. No one's doing anything.
Right.
Anyway, like I started talking to him, and I was like, what do you think happened to the people at Chaco Canyon? And he was just like, he's like, well, my mom told me a story about how the wind started to blow, and it blew for 100 years, and everybody in that region had to leave. Everybody left.
Wow.
So, and the sand covered everything. So that was his version of what happened there. Then he was like saying, the Anasazi is, he says that he thinks it's funny because he thinks that that the white men thought that that's what the name of the tribes were, but he said no, Anasazi just means enemy tribe.
Yes, I just saw that on that video. That
video said the same thing, and I was like, or it said that it was a dirty word, and he said the same thing though. Like before I even watched that video, he was like, we always laugh about that because everybody thinks that they are like some specific tribe. He's like, but no, Anasazi is just our blanket word for just saying we don't know who they were our enemy.
Oh, they were, and the word now I understand they use is like the Pueblo,
Puebloian or Pueblo people.
Puebloian people, but no, that's not it. Like the ancestors of them, but I don't remember.
Or the ancient ones, or
ancient, something like that, right? Which makes.
Or they thought Anasazi meant ancient ones.
Right.
But it's actually a Navajo word. But anyway, then I started talking to him about skinwalkers, and he was like super scared. I was like, have you ever seen a skinwalker? And he was just like, yeah. And I was just like, oh, what, you have? And he's like, what do you know about skinwalkers? And so I told him like 3 stories that I know of them, of like friends who've seen them and stuff.
Oh, you have to tell us on the podcast here.
Okay, all right. So, okay. All right.
So first of all, let's start off by, what is a skinwalker, and why do you think this guy reacted like that?
Okay. So a skinwalker is it's like a Native American witch doctor who's like immortal. It's kind of like their version of like a werewolf / vampire that is magic, but that they, in order to become a skinwalker, you have to make they're evil. So they had to make a sacrifice. Like you have to kill a loved one. You have to either kill someone in your family or like your husband, your wife, or whatever it is. Like you have to make us like a sacrifice, kind of like Thanos or something in whatever that Marvel movie stuff is. But anyway, they are shapeshifters. They can turn into wolves and into humans, and they, even to this day, go around like cursing people, killing people. They're kind of like a cross between a werewolf and a vampire. Like I don't know exactly that they suck blood, but they require something from, like, there's a reason why they harm people.
Right. They can get some kind of benefit out of it.
Yeah, they can get some kind of benefit out of it. Right. And none of them, from my understanding, none of them are, they're not like currently being made, or it's not like you can become a skinwalker. These are all, I don't know how many there are. It may just be like 1 or 2 people, or it may be like a mini. They don't, like, nobody really knows the answer to that, but whatever they are, they're old. They're thousands of years old. So anyway, I started hearing about him when I was a kid, like in New Mexico. Like I went to school next to the Isleta Pueblo, and like I had some friends who would talk about, you know, like how, so the myth or the legend is that you cannot talk about a skinwalker or they will show up. So
ooh, you just hit a taboo with that, man.
A huge taboo with that. But I mean, like, I think I'm proximity away from it because they're mainly in the Four Corner states. So my brother tells me about how he's near this lake called Santa Cruz or Santa Clara or something in New Mexico. And I don't know exactly the details. Maybe I'll get him on here to tell it or something. But basically he says they're on a dirt road and they get stopped because there's this man with like a wolf skin, like he's wearing a wolf skin on his head or something, like, and he's like this old Indian man, and he was in the middle of the road, and he just like stood up and like was like pointing at them like this. It's like and my brother was very scared about it, and he said that there was something off about, like, he didn't know if it was a ghost or what it was. And then later on he didn't even know what a skinwalker was at that point. And then later on he was kind of like researching like what that could have been, and he was like, okay, I think we ran across this skinwalker thing. So I don't know. So that was one story I had. Another good friend I have was from Farmington, New Mexico, and this is so 2 people were telling me this story. They were a car of 4 teenagers. They were going to a party in the middle of nowhere on these back dirt roads or whatever, and they were following a car, and it was getting kind of dark, and the dust was like all everywhere, and they didn't have a lot of really good vision, but they were following the 2 red lights. And then at some point they were kind of going like, why aren't we there yet or whatever, and they stopped to kind of let some of the dust settle. And once it started settling, there was just this giant wolf, like the size of a bear, with like in the light from their headlight was shining into its red eyes, and that's what they think they were following instead of headlights. And they were like, oh my God, holy crap. So they backed the car up, and then the wolf started ramming their vehicle, and they started trying to get away from this wolf, and the wolf like was chasing them and slamming into the vehicle to the side of it and stuff like that. And then they came to like a crossroad where they had to make a turn, so they had to come to a sudden stop before they like turned the car because they weren't really paying attention. And when they did, the wolf crouched down, stood up, and turned into a man. And then because we're all from New Mexico, and so we were like telling our skinwalker stories, like who knew of skinwalkers. And then Wendy has a skinwalker story where, like, you know, there was like a bundle of like skin and bones and like some sort of like weird like stuff underneath this woman's house, and she was having like this unexplained blockage in her throat, and like she was dying and she couldn't breathe. And they had a shaman come over, and when they found, like, he knew it was the work of a skinwalker, and he went out front and he found what, like, he was able to like sense like where something was buried, dig it up, remove it from her house, and then she was like instantly healed. Like there's
a lot of that kind of stuff in Mexico as well, that like when let's say we're hiking somewhere, Pedro will spot it right away. He'll be like, you see that? That's like kind of like witchcraft or bad medicine of a people, and there's like a little like offering of bones and stuff, and some kind of like black magic that people put on other people. But anyway, I don't know, it's not probably like skinwalker stuff, but it's the same idea. And it kind of reminded me of like the Chupacabra. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, the Chupacabra. That's
crazy legend.
The Chupacabra is like a mystical animal that comes and kills dogs and sucks their blood.
And like random animals like goats and sheep, whatever.
Right. Oh, it's like, isn't Chupacabra the goat killer? Isn't that the name? Isn't that what the
it's always like it's kind of like a joke / legend myth. Who knows? Urban legend more than anything else at this point.
I don't know, but yeah, I for me those things are kind of fascinating, just because I know so many people that have had some kind of run-in with them. Anyway, this Navajo dude was telling me about how, he saw one once like around the Monument Valley Cliffs or whatever. And it was basically a wolf that walked and turned into a man in front of him. And he said like the best thing you could do is pretend like you didn't see it, you don't know, like don't act scared, and don't react and don't interact, and turn your attention away and act like it's like you didn't notice it. He's like, that's the best thing you could do, because like they feed on your fear. And then he also said like don't talk about them anymore, they'll come. Like he was super scared of them, like he really believed it.
Wow, I've never heard of this before. Well, so what made you just decide to ask him? Just because you had been talking about it with friends and it just came up, or it's something that you always wanted to ask him?
I just know that they're in that region, and I've listened to podcasts and stuff that they're in the Navajo Nation. I don't know if they are ancient Navajos or if they're something else, or I don't know. And so I just was kind of like, wow, he's a Navajo dude. I'll ask him, hey, have you ever heard of Skinwalkers? And he's like, what do you know about Skinwalkers? So yeah,
sounds like the typical shapeshifter. Interesting. Wow.
I mean, it sounds to me like kind of like where like a werewolf legend came from.
Yeah.
Even though I think the werewolf legend came from Europe, but
well, maybe there are these shapeshifters type of skinwalkers everywhere in the world. There's a lot of stories about people that can shapeshift.
Yeah. Super weird.
Yeah.
So then the next weekend I went to the Gila Cliff Dwellings, which is have you heard of Mesa Verde? That's like the big, those are the biggest Indian cliff dwellings. Well, these are littler, they're not quite as big, but they're still pretty impressive. Like I'll put video and photos and stuff in here, and no one was there. Like I had the entire ruins for like 3 hours to myself, with not even like a park ranger, like nobody. It would just
but it was open.
Yeah, it was open. Like you
were allowed to go. It wasn't
you're allowed to go. Like I said at the entrance gate, like I put my donation in the box, and like I went with my brother and my niece, and like I said hey to the park ranger, and he gave my niece like a little pamphlet to fill out as she like walks around or whatever. And like some interesting things I thought about it was, again, there was the T-shaped door where it's like smaller at the bottom and then bigger at the top, which is in Peru. It's all over Mesoamerica, or it's also in Chaco Canyon. And like I don't understand this design element. Like what was the function of that? Like now maybe there was like a door and then some like windows that they always had next to it, and we just don't know because that infrastructure isn't still there. We don't really know what it would have looked like in its heyday.
Right.
But at the same time, like was there some, how they have those weird petroglyphs of beings that have like the big broad shoulders and the like tiny little legs? Like sometimes
that's true.
It makes me wonder if there's a correlation with that, or
Yeah, or if there was a structural thing, there was like there was a reason for it. There was some other reason, maybe it was an airflow thing, or I don't know, or like a superstition to make it like that, or who knows.
Yeah, it's so bizarre, but it's just so weird to me how they're in so many of these places, and I've never really heard well, it also, it's also evident that they were in communication with each other, right?
Right, exactly.
So they're having design elements that are going from South
Yeah,
America to North America here.
right.
When I was a kid and I came here, I think I do remember coming here, and I remember thinking that this corn was real, like it was actually from like 1200. But now I'm thinking like, no, there's too many birds and animals and stuff that would have gotten it, so probably not. Like, I don't know, but so yeah, I'm at the Gila Cliff Dwellings. I don't know if that's original wood or not. Super cool. Just really amazing stuff. In order to preserve it, or maybe that's not original. I'm not 100% sure. I'll go show you some of the whoa. Wood would have totally gone there. There would have been a ceiling on all that. So this is a stone, like top of a window, but there are a lot of wood ones. I think they're original. They were like that at Chaco Canyon. So they say 80% of this is original. It totally looks like concrete though. Feels like super hard, feels like concrete. I mean, that does not look original. That looks like they put that in to keep you from going somewhere. But a lot of the other stuff they say is original. So I just wanted to kind of show you their building technique. It's not as precise and beautiful as Chaco, but they definitely put some sort of like mortar. I don't know, it's real secure. It's hard. It's not like flaking off at all anywhere in the whole place. So yeah, like that. They cover up doors. Okay, I'll show you something else here in a second. Okay, so the other thing I was going to show you is like, I think this is original, right? This was like this at Chaco. And then there's like the wood underneath like that. I don't know. I really don't. Doom, doom, doom. You're not really supposed to go in these.
That second video that we watched about Chaco Canyon, there was, I think it was the second one. I had watched a third one too that I didn't send you. But anyway, they were talking about what was found there and how there were parrots that you would only find in at least southern Mexico, if not Central America.
And shells.
And shells, but and turquoise, like certain turquoise that only come from there,
turquoise,
or cacao, like
oh right
from chocolate, like cocoa. But he also said that the door, like this particular door in, I guess it was Pueblo
Bonito.
I think
the biggest one.
Yeah, he said that doorway was only found in Palenque, which is in southern Mexico also. So I don't know if it's the same one you're talking about, because the ones that you just mentioned, that T shape is all over. So, but this particular one, he's like, that shape was only found there. So there was definitely influence. Yeah, I mean, it's not really that hard to believe.
No.
People walked and traveled and stuff. It's not really that far. It's one landmass.
I mean, and it's like when they did LiDAR, they found there's like a huge road systems. Like, but in Mexico, they're called, what's the name of the, what is it called? Crap, I knew the name of that. Can't.
Chichen Itza? What are you talking about?
No, the giant highway systems that they had in between all of.
Oh, I don't know the name of that. I think I learned that in school years ago. I have
no
idea.
I know that it's just something I commonly use a lot, but I can't think of it off the top of my name. Anyway, like they have it's giant like roads that are like 40 feet wide, big roads that they had big highway systems. They had them all over Guatemala. They had them all over,
Yeah. Well, that
South
would make
America.
sense because it was like
It's all over Chaco Canyon. It's like,
yeah, those Chaco Canyon, those big ones. I know, and they only were able to see them or rediscover them when they were from an aerial view, really.
right.
And
With
I was thinking,
a LiDAR detection.
was that like I was thinking maybe it was a landing field, but I wasn't sure. I mean, I'm sure it could just be a road. A road is a road traveled by land, but I thought maybe it was a landing strip.
Okay, so let's just talk about Chaco Canyon real quick. Let me just give a little summary for people. Okay, so it's in northwest New Mexico, and it's in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing like anywhere close to it within 100 miles. Like it's
My understanding is kind of close to the Four Corners region.
Close to the Four Corners region, but I mean, you have to camp there. There is no hotel anywhere. There's no town. There is nothing. There's nothing. And to get there, I've been 4 times actually, because apparently I went with when I was little, but I don't remember that. My mom says I was like, I don't care where the Indians lived. That's what apparently I said when I was little, and I was like, I don't want to go here anymore. It's just hot.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, it's super amazing. It's like, in my opinion, it is like the Great Pyramids of North America. It's North America's Machu Picchu. It is the place that every American should go, because it's our Stonehenge. It's like the coolest thing.
It's like an unknown jewel.
It's just such an unknown jewel, and I don't know hardly anybody who's ever been. And like even New Mexicans, I know a couple who have been, but it's not like the 3 times I've been there, I see Japanese people and Germans. Like I hardly see any other Americans. It's just a shame. It's like a crying shame that like we aren't more aware of this. And it's like these, they haven't even excavated the whole thing.
Yes.
It's this giant canyon that has like, for instance, it's like Pueblo Bonito. It's like this big D-shaped thing. There's a bunch of little different pueblos, but it would have had, I'm not sure if it's like 600, 500, 900 rooms. They have up to 9 stories tall. Like these were full on ginormous like skyscraper type buildings. And they're their own unique architecture. Like they took the stone and made it into like little tiny flat bricks and built up on it using but this is everybody's like taught, this is before Columbus ever came to the United States. This is like 850 BC,
right?
or AD.
Yeah, it was
after death, they say. And then they disappeared from, just they're gone by 1250, before the conquistadors ever arrived, before 1482 Columbus sailed the ocean blue, before any of that.
92.
1492 or anyway.
But I didn't. Okay, so it was only a couple hundred years. I thought it was from 8 something, like 850 BC until 1200 AD. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's important to double check that. But anyway,
the other thing is
the numbers are wrong.
The dating is like a little bit weird. All they know is that when they found these, and some of those documentaries are off, because they almost made it seem as if the conquistadors is what drove them
set
out.
it off.
But they
but that's not. No,
never found them.
No, but both of those, the ones that we watched that we should reference in our notes is
they'll be in the show notes.
Yeah, they said that they ended probably because famine set in, and in fact wind, like it started to become harsh to live in, so that was the reason why they left. And then it said that they haven't disappeared. These people didn't just disappear like a lot of people say what happened with the Mayans. They are just in different areas. They've gone to different people, like the Hopi or like Zuni people. So
it's
just
not
like
weird.
They disappeared.
Because there's no skeletons around. Like they found like
Those
found like
skeletons.
14 skeletons. But okay, this, to be clear,
those were murdered supposedly.
And on one thing it says they're murdered, but then I also read an article. Oh, I meant to send you this article. I read an article about how they discovered that those skeletons are all matriarchy. So those 13 women are all of the same family line over 350 years. So
Oh, wow.
they weren't necessarily
Murdered
like
and
murdered
yeah.
then, and it was showing that they were like the queens or that like they were like the leaders of the tribal members.
Right.
So they were
So
some
maybe
sort of
they were
important
actually
family.
because they had I was wondering if they were related. I was like, well, they could be related, but then the woman who had first found them said, well, in her diary note said, well, maybe because there was one male, and so maybe they were
his husband.
they
or,
were the wife, right?
sacrifices.
Exactly. But
But
then
no,
I
the
thought they
current
were
thing
related.
is
So maybe they died naturally, and then they were just their
doing some
injury.
sort of, or
They had an injury to the head. They had like skull
well, they
injuries.
said that there's a hole in their skull, but it could have been like Egyptians where they removed the brain from
Right, exactly.
who knows
they could have
what.
died first, and then that was done after.
That's the thing. It's like anytime an archaeologist finds, like, they'll be like, oh, this stone, this is a rounded stone, this signifies fertility.
Right.
Everything's
You're
about
just like,
fertility or sacrifice.
Right. Well, they did, but my understanding too was that they did find other skeletons besides those women that were and that one guy. That there were a few others.
When I was there, it's under 50. It's under 50 or 100 that have been found in the entire site. Like there's, and so, but the thing is that this place, Chaco Canyon, was built for like hundreds of thousands of people. Like it was a city. It was a ginormous, giant city. And that, and like, so like their argument is just like, well, it's just ceremonial. They would come there once a year for their, okay, you don't build 9-story skyscrapers and then just go live in a little tent for, whatever, 9 months of the year, and then just come there for, a season to, like, people just don't do that. Like, you don't, if you're going to build this sophisticated structure, like, you either live around or amongst it or something. You don't just abandon it for half the year. I mean, some of the theories they come up with are kind of crazy to me. But the other thing is that, so it wasn't found until the 1890s. And the Smithsonian Institute came in really quickly after that. And there are no artifacts from, they'll tell you what they found. They'll say, like, oh, we found amazing things. We found thousands and thousands of turquoise necklaces and tons of food in the baskets and tons of baskets and tons of pottery and like all kinds of goods and things, but you cannot see it. That, like, even in, like, I've been all over looking for these
like archives and
like, well, I like, unless you can go into particular archives that you have permission to go into in Washington DC, I don't know, but it's not in any of the museums in the Smithsonian museums in Washington DC. It's not on display, and it's not on display in the visitor center within Chaco Canyon. And it's just kind of like, where is it then? Where is all the stuff?
Right. In somebody's personal collection, or in a dark room in the Smithsonian somewhere, and who knows? And it's not out for public view. And why?
And I don't understand why you would remove it from the spot. Just like, they have a really nice visitor center. They could,
because why is anything removed from there? Like the museums, the modern museums, while on the one hand they're so great and they're beautiful and we appreciate them, the other hand they're considered tomb raiders, really, because
basically. Yeah.
I mean, they're not even in the culture of the place where they took
and
it from.
It's like, even it's like, okay, the Parthenon marbles are in the British Museum, right, instead of the Parthenon in Greece. And Greece has been like, hey, Greece called, we want our marbles, we want our stuff back. And they're just like, yeah, sorry, we took it in good faith like many hundreds of years ago, so like, eat it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at least it is on public display for free.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying that it's right. I still think we should give it back.
Is kept well. Right. Exactly.
Right. But it is climate control.
That's a whole nother story about museums.
But this is like nowhere to be seen. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, and anyway, they're trying to drill around Chaco Canyon right now for oil. That's like a big thing that's going on in New Mexico right now. Like, that breaks my heart, because it's like,
yeah.
Then that brings us to the other thing. Okay, so it's like, did you look into the wing makers at all?
very briefly. I watched that one video from
The Scott guy.
the Scott Brian Scott. Yeah.
So apparently this is a kind of like this is like a crazy myth thing. Like, and I haven't completely researched it all the way, but I'm wanting to. But it's there was this group called the Wingmakers, which in the 90s, a group of hikers and or scientists, I'm not really exactly sure what their entire role was, but a group of like 4 or more friends were hiking near and around Chaco Canyon and found this cave. They go into the cave and there's all these like crazy paintings, and they found like this weird object, and it was some sort of weird spherical disc. And one guy, they call in the government, people come in, they start examining it. They're like, they close it off. No one's ever to know where
this is ours.
Yeah. No one's ever to know where it's at. And one of the guys doing the research on this disc or whatever, they found out how to read it, how to get information on it. Basically says that they're time travelers, and that they predate the Native Americans. Like this cave has been around for thousands of years or something.
And where is that cave?
It's near Chaco Canyon, but it's undisclosed. Like they won't tell you where it is. Uh-huh. So, but in a way you could totally believe it, because it's, like I said, there's nothing around there. There's no civilization for 100 miles anywhere in any direction around Chaco Canyon. And they don't make it easy to, it's not very accessible. It's just like, unless you want to go battle, like for instance, me and my brother went to the furthest excavated Pueblo. And it was like a 9-mile hike or something. And I ran into a bobcat the size of, a lion. I mean, like, it was just like, that was kind of scary.
Right, because you're out there. And it's not even, and I just looking at the footage of that area, it's like complete badlands. It's not easy to hike around. It's not like just go hike up a mountain, even if it were. It's up and down canyons, really.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could still do it. I did it. Okay, so here I'm going to talk about some personal anomalies that have happened to me in Chaco Canyon, and like what made me want to go back 3 times in 1 year.
Okay, and then remind me to tell you about my thought about what I think about the water situation in Chaco.
Okay. All right, cool, because that is perfect. Okay, so first thing is, like, I go with my friend, and we don't get to like do a lot of hiking around it because she has her dog with her, and you can't take dogs into national parks, so like don't even try to bring them. So we just do like whatever we can do driving by, but we still have to spend the night there and camp like in the little thing like outside of it, because it's late, it's a dirt road, and it's just like the practicalities of it. So we're spending the night there. I'm in a little tent, she's sleeping in her car, and I get like this buzzing in my ears, and I kind of have an intuition to get out of my tent and look up at the sky, and to like I just felt like something was going on. So it's in the middle of the night, it's like 3 a.m. or something, maybe 4, I don't even know. And it's in the middle of summer, it's like July, it's super hot. I get on top of a picnic table and I start looking up, and this it's almost like something out of a laser show. So it looked like a pink flower, or it was like one pink point, like fuchsia, like very bright fuchsia pink, like a big giant fuchsia star is there. And then all of a sudden it breaks into five or six, I'm not even sure which one, 5 or 6 pieces, and does like a loop around each other like a flower, and then goes into itself. So it made like a weird floral pattern for me. And then that was it. That was gone. And I was like, that's the weirdest UFO or interesting thing I've ever seen. Like, that was like kind of like a firework or something, but not, because it was in the middle of nowhere and straight directly above my eyesight, So I kind of thought like, okay, I have to come back here for real and go hiking around, like when I'm not with my friend who has the dog or whatever. So a month later, I convinced my little brother to go with me, and because he's game for anything, and he's like a pretty good hiker and all that stuff. So we decide we go out there for like 4 or 5 nights. We're like gonna do it for real. Like we got to go to like every single excavated site. And like I'm okay, first thing is like behind Pueblo Bonito, you climb up this little canyon, this little rock path to get on top of the cliff so that you can do like a look over the, like an aerial view of the entire Bonito. Well, I start like finding all these weird holes and like these weird like square water drain things. And I'm kind of thinking like, I wonder if this was like some sort of drainage system for like I'm kind of like finding some weird stuff that no one's like saying what it is. And then I start knocking on the walls, like on the cliff on the way up, and it's hollow. And then I start knocking on the ground that I'm on the giant cliff. I'm like knocking on the whole thing, and I'm going, this is a hollow mountain, or this is a hollow like cliff. And my brother starts knocking on it, and he's like, sandstone just do that? Is it always like that? And I know the answer to that is no, because I've since then gone to a lot of sandstone places and tried to knock on them, and they're not that, I mean, to an extent when they're thin enough they are, but not like a whole entire attached cliff. You can't knock on a cliff of giant sandstone and arches and it just all and it's like ringing like a bell. So that I thought was really weird, and I have video of that, and I'm going to put that in here.
Okay, I'm in this canyon thing. I don't know how I got up there with Logan. Hey, Logan. Anyway, this, I put my hand here. This is hollow. You hear that? Look over here. Like, what is this? Why is it hollow? I don't get it. Weird. Chaco Canyon, people. Okay. So I just found this. It's like a big rock. I'm on some big boulder. Hi, Logan. There's some nice ruins and things down there. See? Oh, yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to point this out to you. See, I found this with all this lichen on it, and it's very light. And then, listen to this. The whole boulder I'm standing on. Looking at it, see in there. I don't know. Is it hollow? Is this whole thing? Am I on a hollow mountain? What the hell? Why does everything sound like this? It's weird.
And then, so then like another one of the days when we went to that furthest one away where we saw the bobcat, I don't know what happened to me, but like my brother was kind of getting far ahead of me, and I was trying to keep within a certain, I was trying to get within a certain distance of him because, you know, there's rattlesnakes and all kinds of other critters out there. I was like, I don't want to be too far away from him. But I hear kind of like a noise change, and I look over back towards the main part of Chaco Canyon, like where the Pueblo Bonitos and all the other pueblos are. And it's tall grass. It's not desert landscape at all. It's all this tall grass. There's these giant buffalo everywhere. And there's the buildings are full height, and there's smoke coming out of them, and it's just like there's trees all over the place, and the river is like lush with water. And this vision, or what, I don't know, I guess you call it a vision, it lasted for about like, I don't know, maybe 5 seconds. And then my brother says something to me. I turn around and look at him, and I turn around and look back, and it's normal. It's desert ruins again. So I was kind of going like,
wow.
Yeah. So it was like a time portal, or maybe like I just had
from that time.
Yeah. So I don't know what that was, but it was not a desert at that point. Then, so I got kind of like, I started researching that tumbleweeds aren't even native to North America, like, or to the desert. Like those are from like Russia, and those were brought over by like what we think of now as the desert is not what would have been like 1,000 years ago.
I always think that, right? I'm like, 1,000 years ago, anything could have been different. And I also feel like that 1,000 years was a different, I don't think that that time is correct anyway. I personally think it's probably a lot older than that. So
Yeah, me too.
yeah. But anyway, yeah, a lot of things could change in 1,000 years. If there was enough that there was a huge drought and that the people had to leave, then that was just a short period of time, maybe within a, I don't know, a generation where people are like, okay, let's move out of here because there's no way for us to continue living here.
Yeah, there is a river, or like there is a really nice creek that runs through it even still, and it has some water in it always. But that's why I think it's weird when they're talking about there's no water source. I'm like, but there's the little creek in between the Pueblo.
Right. You don't know how much water there was at that
I don't know
time.
how much there was at the time, right?
It could have been a lot more, right? Well, they were saying that it was still far and that they would have had to transport it. But I mean, not everybody, people have known about aqua systems of aqueducts for a long time. I don't know if there's any indication of that, but there could have been a technology that they carried the water that was not that they had to literally go and carry it. So who knows?
So what was your water theory about, or your water?
Well, when I was listening to them talk about how there was like a scarcity of water and how could they have lived there with such extremes, with the extreme heat during the summer, extreme cold in the winter, and you know, and of course I was thinking, well, how did they know it was like that? I still don't see why they think that it was like that, like for definite, but then my thought was, well, maybe they were just maybe it was a different time period. Okay, so there was just a lot more water. But also I was thinking maybe because these kivas are closed, a lot of them are closed off, are these rooms, right? You could talk more about that.
Underground.
And they're underground. That I was thinking maybe there was just an underground water. There's an underground water access. Maybe there's an underground river. Okay, yes, they could figure that out now with the technology that we have today. But some of these videos that we did watch were pretty old. But they are going to be fracking in that area, so that there's got to be some kind of water in that area for them to be able to do that, I would guess. So I just think that there's access to inner earth. That was my other thought. It was access to inner earth, and there's something to do with water down there. There's water down there, and they're able to harness this water for them in some other technology that we're just not aware of. That was my thought.
So the access to inner earth thing, 100% my intuition. I was going to say what my intuition tells me is going on. The reason the mountain is hollow behind it is because there's like, and even like the wingmakers, like I think there's cave systems that we aren't really knowing about so much.
Exactly.
And I also feel like they were if we're being honest here, I think these were are not honest, but like if you want to get like super crazy Nikki conspiracy theory, what happened? Like first of all, you don't leave your turquoise necklaces like in your you know, you don't leave giant squash blossoms if you're like, oh yeah, it's so dry here, we're gonna go to a different village. You don't leave everything you've ever made and just these giant, amazing, expensive things and your shells and these things that are coming back. Like they left in the middle of the night. That's like by all evidence is like they didn't pack up and slowly migrate out of it. They left in the middle of the night.
But you know that's opposite of what was the video said, that they actually did take time and they closed up shop and left it. There's no other garbage around. It was, according to these videos, the one that Robert Redford did also was like they brought all people arrived there from all over the continent, bringing all sorts of offerings and gifts, and they would have left it there because they also had that thing about throwing the ceramic as an offering to show that we don't need this, and you know this physical world isn't really all there is. So they would have left that. So I don't really know if I think that they left in the middle of the night. Like I have no idea. But they're
so according to the thing is, for me, the reason I think they left in the middle of the night is because like the amount of jewelry that they say was there. Right. Like the pottery, they found full pots, not even broken pots. They found like full, or supposedly thousands of full pots that were.
Or maybe they thought they were going to go back. Oh, it'll probably be fine in a couple of years. We'll come back.
Even then, it's just like I feel like I don't know. It's a fishy thing. The whole entire thing is really fishy.
Yes.
I think so here's my thing. What I think happened is the same time as like the Younger Dryas period, where there's like there's woolly mammoths and there's big giant sloths, or this is like 10,000 years ago or like 11,800 years ago when Göbekli Tepe is working and all this stuff back in Turkey, and we have all these other architecture going on. I'm thinking Chaco is like early civilization, like then. And then I think literally the ant people came and took them to go live underground, because that's what I think happened to survive.
That could be partially it. I think some of them did go underground, and probably the rest of them are the native people of the Southwest. Yeah. But this goes along with the Lemurian book that I was reading that was written in 1939 that said that Lemuria was a huge continent that was about 10,000 years ago, and it was a huge continent that spanned most of the world, most of the globe, and that the water there was the same amount of water on Earth, but it was divided differently because the continent was like one mass, and there were huge rivers. They weren't ocean.
So and like then Pangea?
I suppose, but no, here, okay, California apparently was the end of the continent. And after California, like the Sierra Nevada, from that east there was a huge river. There was a river there dividing another piece of land. But then that river dried up. But interestingly, in one of the videos, they did say that there was a huge river in that area that has dried up. So that's why I agree.
The Grand Canyon.
That's true, but I would suppose that was, I guess that wasn't west. It was probably like north, going through that whole area. Exactly. So, right.
So the ant people apparently took people into the Grand Canyon, through caverns in the Grand Canyon.
Yes. Right.
And held them there for 1,000 years so that they would, or this is according to Native American legend, right, about how they survived
cataclysm, like the Great Flood.
It was ant humanoids that came and took them underground, and all the Pueblo people, and kept them there because the air was not breathable for 1,000 years. And then when they were released, they took them out into the canyons and put them all over the four corners.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, that I've heard that mythology also, as they came from the inner earth. They came from Earth, from inside of the earth, which makes sense. That's why I think Chaco is a lot older than they think that it is now, than they're saying. But I think it had something to do with the Lemurian time, which was like 10,000 years ago or longer. And even 10,000 years ago, I think it was actually a lot older than that.
Well, I was listening to a podcast the other day on Earth Ancients. I think his name is Jim something. I'll find out and put it what the thing was. But his theory, he just wrote a book about Zealandia, which is like New Zealand, and about how it's essentially Lemuria.
Listen to that. Yes.
And
yes.
And that the highest peaks, like the Mount Everest of Lemuria, is modern day New Zealand.
Oh.
Yeah, and so that you can actually see continental, like, parts of New Zealand underneath it that would have belonged to a landmass that was once above water. So that's really interesting. And like, we should definitely, in fact, like, I started reading that book you sent to me, but it was like a full-on book and I couldn't finish it yesterday. But we got to do an entire episode. I think we should do an entire episode on Lemuria.
I definitely think so too. And
because they say Mount Shasta is an entry point.
Yes,
and that people, Lemurians, live underneath.
Right.
The mountain.
That's why I think that they're connected to the native people somehow. Also, because if everyone was living underground somewhere, they must have known about each other, I would suppose. Or anyway, who knows? But they did say in that book that Lemuria, again, like the east part of it, the easternmost part of the continent was California, and that's why they said they were going through this whole big history about how California was. Like how it was named California, and how California is completely different environment than the rest of the country. Like going east of California very quickly.
Like the redwoods, the oldest trees in the world.
Redwoods, the oldest trees in the world, exactly. Like they're thousands of years old. And then I was thinking about Mount Shasta. They didn't mention Mount Shasta, but also the diversity of going down north, even to the Baja California, is just diverse in in all of its ecosystems. And then like east of that, you got the Sierra Nevadas, and then bam, things change. You got the plains and everything's completely different. So that's what they think that, yeah, that was part of, and also like the attitudes, and like, there's like a lot of mysticism in California. Anyway, this whole book, there's like chapters on, there's like 1 or 2 chapters on California and how California was part of Lemuria and how it was like ruled by
I mean,
much
I
like
think
women.
that whole San Andreas fault, like that would include probably up to Washington and all the way into Alaska. The Pacific Northwest, like that whole region. It's like that there's a giant tectonic plate that runs between, you know, all up and down that, which would be where continents could have converged.
Yes, and also that's where the continent went down. Like the continent of Lemuria went down in the Pacific, and that's also what we're seeing, like Mount Shasta, all those peaks right there, the end of the east part of Lemuria.
It's really interesting because we think that the Earth is this really stable, like just like very, you know, studious, like librarian who just slowly turns one page at a time. But like, no, I think she has some chaotic mood swings and just like completely cuts her hair all off and dyes it pink every once in a while. I mean, like, I think it's like the entire, like, I think things probably happen faster than we think they do.
Exactly. Yeah, I think so too. It's
so many like rock layers and stuff look like something violent had to happen for it to be like the way they, I don't know.
Yeah, and we think that happened millions and millions of years ago, which it probably
over millions of years, but we don't know.
Or over a time period of millions and millions of years, right, and exactly, but we don't know. And I feel like, well, I don't know, who knows? We may be on the verge. I feel like for a couple of weeks ago, I kept saying in my head, like, on the verge. I was like, on the verge of what? I just kept hearing in my head, like, on the verge. And I was like, I'm either on the verge of a mental breakdown, a verge of a collapse of society. I don't know what we're on the verge of, but that's what I feel like.
I don't know. Definitely maybe societal collapse or whatever. But for me, I'm kind of going like, I'm not even that affected. I mean, like, I'm sure I'll be affected, but I'm not that interested in, or I'm not as interested in, I'll put it that way, what ends up happening with our little Play-Doh society that we've built. I'm just more interested in, like, are we actually going to have any physical shifting to the actual land? Are we actually going to have real climate change? Because we are not in a system that has ever been stable. Like, are we going to have real, is our air quality going to change? Like that kind of change. I'm kind of wondering, are we going to have pole shifts? Are we going to have solar flares? Are we going to have the salt water boil to this point? Are we going to have the melting of the ice caps? I mean, like, all these things, are these things going to happen in our lifetime or not? Because that's what we really are needing to focus on here.
I guess, but there's going to be no way, even
if they do happen,
at that level, it's just going to be like, wherever we are. Let's say, I don't know how many people died during those catastrophic events. Yeah, in history, and what percentage of the population went underground, what percentage of the population made it on the land and continued to live and were descendants of them. Like, I'm curious to know, like, what was that population? And we're all just going to be, well, you know,
and here's the thing.
If going to be in the time and the place where we need to be, wherever that is.
Let's say Lemuria was half the world. Well, there wasn't much of it that was okay. So, like, where you could build, you could have the most amazing underground, like, shelter in the world. But if that goes like 1,000 leagues underneath the sea, bye.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you won't know exactly which is the best part to have that. We're talking about how many miles below.
City, but what if the air quality is like giant acid rain and not breathable? There's no way to prepare for everything.
There's no way to prepare. And even, yeah, you're right, with the underground shelters and stuff. And if there is a large quantity of water coming in, how much of that is actually going to be safe anyway in an underground shelter? What is that even going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that would probably help against solar flare. My dad's been talking about solar flare yesterday. He was like, or Sunday, he was like, yeah, so we're at that, the solar storms
Minimum.
happen like in 12-year cycles or 9 years. I don't remember how many years, but it's not that, it's pretty often, these cycles of like 11, 12 years, whatever. And we're at the bottom of it, meaning we're at very minimal solar flare. He goes, I don't know, but like in 12 years, when we're at the peak again, and we're in the middle of all this technology, that's when things start to go bad. That's when the solar flares start coming out.
I have talked about the Carrington event before, which is, the 1980, I can't remember what year it is, but it's the solar, like you could see aurora borealis all over the world,
right.
The weather was really super weird, or whatever.
Exactly.
And the
telecommunications, that's exactly
there was some sort of telegrams were alive or were working there, and they went down. And if that same Carrington event happened today, like bye all your cell phones and whatever else satellites are used for. I mean,
right. And even solar panels and stuff. That's what I was thinking about that, because I want to be like off the grid and, like we're being independent, but I was like, so solar panels are going to get flared up also. Isn't every kind of electronic?
I do think personal wind turbines and combo of solar are pretty cool, but
yeah. No, I definitely do too. But I think but in the event that should happen, I don't think solar is going to make it through.
Well, and it's like, and we don't really know what happens during a pole shift, but we know they happen, and we know we haven't had one in our observable, or how about since we've been recording.
Right, exactly. And they say that we're due, and we are shifting from magnetic north pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's true. So lots of crazy lots of crazy stuff to think about.